everyone, and welcome into Bears Blitz, brought to you by IGS Energy. I'm Cassie Carlson, joined in studio with Luke Canellis. Anthony Herron is coming to us this week from Iowa City because he is back at his alma mater for a possibly historic game this week, Big Ant.
Cass, Lou, it's I'm normally there with you when we prepare and we record Bears Blitz, but to be able to be here in Iowa City, there's no place I'd rather be. My old coach, Kirk Ferentz, has an opportunity with the game on Saturday to break his tie with Woody Hayes and become the all-time wins leader in the history of Big Ten football. And so the fact that he's still leading Iowa football 27 years later, and I was on the field at Kinnick Stadium where I'm going to be calling the game on Saturday night for the Big Ten Network. We had that first win together against Northern Illinois. I know a lot of our fans who watch our Bears coverage, there are a lot of NIU fans as well. So the first win was back in 1999. We beat Northern Illinois. It took a year to get Kirk Ferentz's second win, but now to be able to be here for this, to be on the call for the game, it is a very full circle moment for me.
I love that for you, Big Ant. Full circle for you. This week is going to be full circle for Ben Johnson, who's making his return to Detroit. Both these teams are coming off of division losses to start the season. So it's like Ben Johnson was asked today, are you already talking about starting this season 0-2? He's like, you're crazy. We're going there to win. And Dan Campbell had the same response. And a lot of the eyes are going to be, again, on Caleb Williams in week 2 after we saw him in week 1 kind of revert back to a lot of ways from what we saw in his rookie season. So what do you hope to see from Caleb Williams, Lou?
Well, I want to see better command in the huddle, better with the snap count, all right? I want him to use the cadence as a way to beat Detroit. Declan Doyle, the offensive coordinator, said just that to the media earlier this week. There's opportunity for Caleb Williams to turn around what we saw in that opener. 4 pre-snap penalties, needed to take a timeout before the play clock ran out. That can't happen at home. And obviously, he needs to be far more accurate with his passing, because in the Ben Johnson offense, you need to get the football in the hands of your playmakers in stride so they can pick up yards after the catch. I expect, even though I think the crowd will be a factor, I feel like Caleb Williams will definitely grow from week 1 to week 2.
Big Ant, I want to go to you and some of the accuracy issues that we saw from Caleb Williams. Is that feet? Is it eyes? How does that work together?
Honestly, I do think definitively the footwork is definitely a part of that, Cass, but even beyond that, the recognition of where to go with the football. There were a lot of moments in the first half of the game where he looked more decisive, kind of, with the touchdown, check down kind of mentality to think about considering a shot play, coming off of that within his read progression, and then checking it down to some of the short and intermediate playmakers. And the Bears were able to move the ball effectively in that regard. Now, Brian Flores wasn't blitzing Caleb early in the game. Once there was more blitz pressure that heated up, once the pocket began to collapse a little bit, that's where seemingly Caleb's mechanics, I thought, broke down a little bit more, especially in the second half of the game. And then conversely, also the Bears defense in the fourth quarter of that game then began to give up some yardage and some points to the Vikings. And so the control of the game that the Bears really had a lot of was in the balance. And then suddenly the Vikings seized a lot of the momentum. And that's where you certainly want your first-round quarterback, your number 1 overall pick, but who is still in just year 2. It would be great for Caleb to be able to be that force multiplier, that guy who lifts everyone else up. But there is, in the blame pie of that lead, the double-digit lead that was lost in the fourth quarter, Caleb's accuracy is certainly one of those things to continue to watch. And I do think the footwork and staying within the mundane, Lou and I were talking about the mundane with Caleb in pregame last week. He's got to continue to be consistent with that. But you want to see a run game. You want to see playmakers making grabs on balls when they have opportunities for them. You'd love to see the Bears defense close the door on that opponent. So, the scrutiny on Caleb, we'll continue to watch that because we're hoping the Bears have a great one. But there was a lot else that sort of went wrong for the Bears also.
Yeah, a tale of two halves is how all the coordinators put it when talking about last week's game. You mentioned the run game. The Bears struggled to run the ball. Caleb Williams, the leading rusher. DeAndre Swift, just 53 yards on 17 carries. Rookie Kyle Monangai didn't have any carries and only played 9 offensive snaps. So I want you to listen to what Ben Johnson had to say about getting the run game going.
Monangai? Yeah, I need to call more runs. We probably were at, under 20 for called runs for the game. And so I need to call more so that we get him in the game a little bit more. But he that's something that EB and I have talked about, just making sure he has more carries going forward.
All right, you love the honesty from Ben Johnson, Lou, that he just came out and took accountability, saying, I'm going to call more run plays, try to get Kyle Monangai involved, and he admitted it's always good to hear your coach say that. Even DeAndre Swift said the same thing this week. How do you make sure that Ben Johnson sticks to the run and they don't revert back to just calling play-action passing plays when it doesn't go well?
Well, first, let's give some credit to Minnesota's defense. It was one of the top run defenses in the league last year. They add Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave to that defensive line. So that's a pretty tough defense to run against. But you heard the coach. He said, listen, I call 20 run plays. I need to call more. What will be important in Detroit on Sunday is you need to get ahead. If you're trailing, if you're coming from behind with that crowd, it's tougher to run the football in that building than as if you're ahead in the football game, which is what they were against Minnesota. Right. They were up 17-6 going into the fourth quarter, so they could have conceivably run the football 30, 35 times.
Big Ant, is there anything the interior of the offensive line can improve on to make that run game more effective this week?
The Vikings front is certainly different. The Detroit Lions front seven doesn't operate in the same way that the Vikings do, where there's less movement, less eye candy from Detroit within their front seven. So the landmarks for Drew Dahlman and that Bears offensive line, for Joe Thuney on the interior, those will be more static from Detroit, but they're still durable. They're willing to hit blocks in that Lions defense. I do believe, though, as simple as Ben Johnson put it, I just need to call more runs. I like that. That's as simple as I put it sometimes when we're just talking about these things with some of the post-game coverage we've had in years past, just to allow your offensive line to roll off the ball against the opponent on occasion and get into that rhythm with the ground attack, with multiple running backs, with your quarterback not having to have the volume of offense on his shoulders that we saw from Caleb in that game. I was surprised that there wasn't more of a commitment to Ben Johnson just to call run plays, but at the same time, I think I was reminded afterwards, just in thinking, it's the first time we've seen Ben Johnson, not only as the offensive play caller, but as a head coach, and having to sort of handle both of those roles. And it did seem to me to be a game plan that kind of got away from the run in a way that I was surprised by.
And they should have Roschon Johnson back.
Correct. Roschon Johnson is healthy, no injury designation. Big Ann, I want to stay with you. They're going to have to use a silent cadence going into Ford Field. Take us into what that means for this offense. Should that alleviate some of the pre-snap problems, or is it more difficult?
Well, it can be really difficult, especially because this unit up front, excuse me, hasn't been in these environments very much together before. And so for Caleb as a young quarterback, for the offensive line positioning, you think about that first game where the name Braxton Jones wasn't uttered that much. I thought he had a steady and stable effort against Minnesota, against a really talented Vikings defensive front. But then being on the road in Detroit, where the Lions in their opening game, they struggled on the road with cadence, with snap count, with communication. So they're very hungry to get back home and to be at Ford Field. And I anticipate there's a lot of Lions fans that will very much look forward to having their team in their house, that are going to do everything in their power to get after the Bears and force them to handle that. And because a lot of this is new for Caleb, for some of his receivers, for his offensive line, the timing and rhythm we've talked about so much with this Bears offense, and then just the communication from Ben Johnson to Caleb Williams, from Caleb Williams to his playmakers and his offensive line. We saw in Kansas City, the one preseason game on the road where the starters were out there against the Chiefs starters, didn't go so well on the road for the Bears there. So this would be a big challenge for them.
Yeah, Caleb Williams said this week he needs to be louder in the huddle, getting that play call out, and then also louder and more clear at the line of scrimmage.
I don't know how much louder he can be when the decibel level of the crowd at Ford Field is going to be like putting your ear against a speaker at a Pantera concert. All right, splitting a headache. All right, I really think it's going to be a difficult chore for the Bears offensive line and offense to have any type of communication on the field. That's why it's important to get ahead.
All right, Lions defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepard was asked what Ben Johnson's greatest strength is as a play caller, and he said very directly, everything. Next question.
I mean, it's just one game. They still got all the same guys for the most part, but they're a talented group, talented offense, experience. I think this is going on their third year of really all their guys. So, for me, it doesn't change too much. Just because you have one down game or first week, it doesn't really mean too much.
Bears cornerback Jaylon Johnson isn't going to overlook an 0-1 Lions team. He plans on making his season debut Sunday in Detroit, admitting he was never planning on playing in the Monday night game. So a little bit of gamesmanship there as he spoke last week, saying maybe he'll give it a chance to go. But how big of a difference, Big Ann, I'll start with you, is Jaylon Johnson going to be, given the fact that Detroit, despite only putting up 13 points last week, still returns all their weapons?
That's a tremendous development for the Bears to have that guy back onto the field because of the way that he can infuse additional confidence into this Bears defense and the playmaking ability that he brings to the field. And it's not only about the plays he makes on the football, but it's about how cautious the opposing quarterback tends to be when Jaylon Johnson is out there. We've seen some of the stats over the years for the way that opposing QBs have just avoided throwing to his side of the field. And when you've got a guy like that, then it allows you to dictate coverage, because now if you know there's certain areas, certain hash marks, certain landmarks outside the numbers that they're just not willing to go to. If JJ's over there, then you can roll coverage in a different way when he's just got a certain side of the field locked down. Now, he wasn't out there in the preseason, missed the season opener, and it's going to be on the road. So could the Lions, with the confidence they have in a veteran like Jared Goff and in the wide variety of playmakers they have, will they be willing to challenge him? I would imagine they likely will, just because it is in their competitive DNA. But we know how shorthanded the Bears were in that week 1 game, short week. But now getting Jaylon Johnson back out there, and I would imagine he's feeling good if he's willing to go back out there on the road in Detroit. But if you get that guy, the full version of Jaylon Johnson, yes, this Bears defense will certainly be able to kick things up a notch.
Yeah, Big A, they'll want to test his conditioning, number one. Number two, let's not forget TJ Edwards is coming back as well, so that really helps the back seven. I thought for the most part the Bears secondary played well against Minnesota and Justin Jefferson, but now you're talking about a two-headed monster for the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, who is a player. Don't forget, JMO last year, Week 16, Soldier Field, Bears-Lions had 150 yards of offense, so that secondary of the Bears will be tested.
Lou, I want to stick with you because the Lions only rushed for 46 yards against the Packers, and that's typically what their offensive identity is with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And just hearing the noise around the Lions offense now that Ben Johnson's no longer there, they're talking about, is this offense going to be as explosive with Johnny Morton as their OC? Do you feel like their identity is changing? Are you concerned?
You know what? And I want to bring in Big A as well. Big A, I don't care who's the offensive coordinator for the Lions these days. That is not the same offensive line in Detroit that we have seen the last 3 years. Taylor Decker sat out Friday, third day of practice this week with a shoulder injury. Christian Mahogany, second-year player, drafted in the 6th round. Tate Ratledge, drafted just this year. He's a rookie. Dan Campbell, head coach, admitted, I made a mistake. I didn't play these young guys during the preseason, and it showed against the Packers. I think that Detroit's offensive line is not very good, and I get it. Gibbs, Montgomery, behind the line they had the last 3 years, terrific. Best 1-2 combo in football. Not this year.
And to be able to have an offensive play caller that even when you have a guy who's banged up front at tackle like Decker, and you have newness on the interior like Detroit, that can be masked a little bit with a quality play caller who can sort of keep the big picture into account, not just think about a volume passing approach and what a veteran quarterback can do when you drop him back over and over again. One of the main ways you take pressure off of an offensive line that might be a bit leaky is to run the football, is to utilize the screen game. It's one of the areas Detroit specialized in while Ben Johnson was their offensive coordinator in recent years. The way they ran the football with both Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, we saw how special they were as a tandem. But then also, it wasn't just about deep dropbacks for Jared Goff. The screen game, the quick game to Amon-Ra St. Brown, that was such a huge weapon for them. And, of course, multiple tight ends. They had T.J. Hockenson at first. Then you bring in Sam Laporta to replace him. The tight end position has been such a weapon for the Lions while Jared Goff has been there. And so I think for the Bears, defensively, the offensive line, it certainly doesn't appear to be as formidable as Detroit's O-line has been in recent years. But from a game plan perspective, just like we heard about Ben Johnson wanting to make sure he learns from what he can do to improve in week 1, Dan Campbell as the Lions head coach, his job will be to make sure that his approach on offense suits all the personnel to take pressure off of individual groups.
All right, Lou, I want to go to you because if Taylor Decker at left tackle doesn't play for the Lions on Sunday, are you looking at Dio Odengbo to show up big time again?
Oh, Dio and Gervon Dexter bring the house. I mean, listen, Dexter got off to a great start last year. I think he had 5 sacks the first 4 games. He was terrific before he got injured. Dio was as active as he's been since he put on a Bears uniform in that opener against Minnesota. He played 3 snaps inside. I expect Dennis Allen to have Dio inside far more often on Sunday, and I believe Dexter will have the game on defense. I've got Gervon Dexter for 2 sacks on Sunday.
Ooh, I love this. Grady Jarrett questionable to play in this game with a knee injury after not practicing the majority of the week. Kyler Gordon is out, so Bears will still be down a starter in their defense.
They say Rome isn't built in one night. That's kind of how it is. Early on when I was in Detroit with Ben, and he took over the OC job, everything was new, as well as Dan. I think that was Dan's second year. So everything switching over from when Patricia was there and all that and other stuff early on kind of changed over. And so when that whole new regimen came in, everybody kind of had to buy into what they was teaching, the philosophy and everything like that. And you see where they are now, they're successful now. So when same thing when Ben came over here. So we all buying into what he's teaching.
DeAndre Swift was in Detroit for Ben Johnson's first season as OC, where the Lions started 1-6 and ended up finishing 9-8. You can catch my full interview with the Bears running back this Sunday on Bears Game Day Live from 9:30 to 11 on Fox 32 Chicago, your home of the Bears. It's time for our player to watch, brought to you by IGS Energy. It's week 2 and Lou's turn to pick. Who you watching out for?
All right, DeAndre Swift, we are calling number 4 in this game. I want you to silence that Ford Field crowd that's going to be making all that noise. All those fans who said, yeah, Ben Johnson shipped you out. Remind them that first year you two played together, worked together. You had a career high 1,345 receiving and rushing yards. I've got DeAndre Swift for over 100 yards in this game.
Whoa, for our Bears Blitz loyalists, this is a repeat of week 2 last year when Lou also got up out of his chair about DeAndre Swift. You believe in this guy?
I'm a Swiftie this week.
All right, that's it for this week's edition of Bears Blitz. We'll see you Sunday morning for Bears Game Day Live at 9:30.